I'm Fathima Jannah from Brainiac's Higher Grade, and today I'm going to take a webinar on mastering a language. So, before we begin, um, in this webinar, you will be able to at the end of the webinar, you will be able to get a clear idea on how to learn the language, whatever language you are currently learning, and you would have a clear idea of the path of the language learning journey. So before we begin, I want to ask everybody on what language are you learning and why are you learning? You could type in the chat box or just unmute and speak. Anybody wants to speak about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I chose Japanese because I see Japanese series. So I want to know what they're talking about. So I just want to learn Japanese.
Okay, that's a particular reason. There are also other reasons why you can choose a language. So I'm moving on. Anybody else who wants to say or okay, I'm gonna move. You wanna?
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah.
So I'm also learning Japanese because in the future I would like to travel to Japan, and I don't want to feel like a weird foreigner who doesn't know Japanese.
Yeah, that's great. So, what is language learning? Just a minute. Okay, so what is language learning? I'm going to tell you language learning is not only just words or the grammar, it also consists of the slang and the dialects and the speed and rhythm of the speaking. So it's just not sounding like a robot, but also knowing the way of speaking the language. And it's also understanding all these dimensions with the grammar and vocabulary. So that's what language learning is. And why study a foreign language? So you must be like thinking why you should study a foreign language. What is the use of being bilingual? So it creates a positive attitude. Um, it creates a positive attitude and makes us less prejudiced, which is you will be having all these stereotypes and single stories about a language or a culture, but exploring on that culture and language will help us make be less judgeful toward that particular language or culture, and it introduces us to the new culture, so you would get to know uh, how vast the world is and how vast the culture is. And helps us meet new interesting people from that particular culture, and it boosts our confidence, uh, like knowing the self knowing of that you know a language other than your mother tongue and English, you will feel a bit confident that I know this particular language, and you would have the self-confidence when you are bilingual, and you will attain problem solving and abstract concept skills while learning a language, because learning a language will help improve your memory, and it will help in your focus and paying attention to stuff. It will give you the attentional control, and it will help you in multitasking also. So learning a new language, like it requires to think creatively. So it is like found that it is found that the bilingual people are more creative and more have more attention control other than monolinguals. So that's the the benefits you'll get if you study the language, a different language other than your mother tongue and English. Now, before learning a language, uh, there is three things you need to know, which is time, and three things you need is the time and patience and the difficulty. So uh, it can be a slow process where you will only make progress if you are consistent, and it will be a very slow process. You might have seen in the internet, learn a language in 3 months, learn this language in 2 weeks, but that's not how it works. It will take time. It's a slow process and it's a challenging process. So you need the time for it and you need to be patient. And you need to know how difficult the language you have selected is. It can be hard and easy, basic, uh, depending on your linguistic background. Where, for example, a common person from the US can study Spanish and French faster than any other language like Arabic or Japanese or Chinese, because that's more closer to their culture. But it varies from different person's linguistic background. So you need to check how hard or easy the language is. Then you should not get discouraged, or if the process is slow, like it's better to learn for 5 minutes a day than to not learn that language at all and not practice that language that day. So you should consider these facts before learning a language. Next is choosing the right language. So while learning a language, um, you have to decide your motive, where you should not choose it because other people are speaking it, or you should not choose it because you have to learn it in class. Choose it because you like it. You are if you like the culture, if you're curious about the culture or any other thing, even if you don't have a practical purpose, like Kendra said, she wants to travel there one day. Other than that, if you're just curious about the culture and how the language works, go for it. It is your decision. I think it's better that way, to decide on your own liking and not doing it for the sake of learning a language. Then consider the factors of relevancy and the availability of your resources. So when you're self-studying a language, you need to uh, like search in the internet on how much resources are there, and you should collect it. I will talk about more about that in the coming slides. Then you have to define your goals, which is um, by the you should have a goal, by the end of the day I want to learn 5 phrases, or I want to, by the end of the month I need to be able to read in this language. So you have to make goals like that, and you have to also make it achievable. Don't give yourself big goals, but and when you realize that you won't have time to achieve it, just give yourself small goals every day. So at the end of the year or the end of the month, you will be able to finish it. Then aim then what intrigues you to learn in the language? It can be anything. Maybe you want to know the you want to know the culture, or you just want to travel there one day, so you want to know the language, and or maybe you want to work in that particular country, so you need to know the language. And the last is research about your language, on what language you're learning. Get the basic ideas before learning the language. And for example, like check how many letters are there, or how many characters you need to study in that language, or how the pronunciation system works, or is it easy to write or hard to write in that particular language. So you need to look at all these factors, research about your language before learning it, because in some languages like Japanese and Chinese, the characters are very hard to write. Other language like um, Spanish or French is most easy to write. So you need to know what is coming your way, and you need to research about that language. Next is the learning methods. So these are like tips on like how to learn a language, because we are learning a lot of vocabulary and a lot of phrases. We are not learning like a subject. So I think these are the best methods to learn a language. So you can learn through experience and immersion, which is like trying to like if you prefer instead of just reading and writing the language, you prefer to learning to experience, you can watch videos or movies in that particular language which you're learning with subtitles, and by the end of the movie or end of a few movies, you will realize the pattern of that language. You will get a few phrases which they use always, and learning that will help in learning the vocabulary and knowing more phrases. Then learn at a time which works for you. So don't learn if you don't feel like learning the language that day, learning a you don't feel like productive, so you don't, instead of not learning it, because learning a language needs consistency. So if you don't feel like learning that much, learn at a time. Maybe it might be night, maybe it might be in the morning, maybe it might be in the noon. Just learn at a time which feels uh, like good for you. So which will have your most productive time. Learn at that time. So you won't learn at a time which works for you. And instead of not learning it, at least just spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes just to learn that language, instead of like cramming like hours. Don't like sit and learn a language for hours. Just divide it like 10 minutes. Today I learned 10 minutes, today I learned 20 minutes, like that. And every day, at least 5 to 10 minutes, you have to try to learn. Then only you'll be consistent and you will like proceed. And speak from day one. When you're learning a language, it's better if you start speaking from the first day itself. So the first day you might be learning first day you might be learning the alphabets or basic phrases. So just uh, start speaking from the first day itself. Then learn through spaced repetition, active recall, and contextual learning. These are all learning methods you use for learning a language. So spaced repetition is like let's say you learned 5 phrases that day. So while you're doing your other tasks throughout the day, just recall those phrases which you learned in your mind. And if you forget, just write it down somewhere, and like keep a post-it or keep a flashcard with you, so you won't forget what you learned that day, even if it's just 5 phrases or 5 words. And that is spaced repetition and active recalling throughout the day. Just remember it and like say it out loud. And contextual learning is like uh, learn phrases and vocabularies people use in that language mostly, instead of just learning basic words, just learning the words you think people won't use in a daily conversation. So learn learn like that using all these methods. Uh, and next is collecting your resources, or collecting your, oh, just a minute. Yeah, collecting your toolkit and collecting your resources. So you can start by like downloading language apps, even though it don't only depend on the apps or only depend on one resource. Just collect one resource from like don't download many language learning apps, just download one which works best for you. And you can also like get worksheets and workbooks in Pinterest, because I use that. You will have a lot of worksheets, a basic for basic learners, like beginning. You will find a lot of worksheets in Pinterest, or just uh, type in Google. And there are a lot of websites too for learning a language. So uh, there are a lot of websites when you search in the internet, but just choose that one website which works for you. Don't save up, don't put bookmarks on multiple websites, because you're not going to look at it afterwards. I can make sure of that. Then follow YouTube channels and follow podcasts. That too, just one YouTube channel which you trust and which works for you, or one podcast which tells the vocabulary or any grammar, like structuring the sentences, one podcast or one YouTube channel. And the last one is not like compulsory, but it's good if you have the dictionary of that language. Because if you like get confused with some words, you can like go check in the dictionary. So the last one is optional. You don't have to if you can't. So that's like collecting your resources for the language learning. Next is crafting your lessons. Crafting your lessons is like if you want to learn a language and at the end of the day you want to finish a particular task, you have to plan that lesson. So for me it was like uh, i I planned to learn letters, and I was like, I will learn 5 letters a day, and by the end of the month I would be able to read that language. So you have to craft your own lessons. And the best way to do that is start with the characters or letters, um, and the and the alphabets. So learn their pronunciation, because that is like in some languages like Arabic and Japanese, it's tricky to learn the pronunciation of that language. So you have to learn the pronunciation, and you have to practice writing writing that basic that characters, because when you're learning a language, it's not only learning how to speak it, you have to learn how to read it, you have to learn how to write, and you need to like understand the language when somebody is speaking, which is that is listening, and you need to be able to be speaking that language. So uh, I would say start with the letters and make a like uh, make yourself be able to read that language, because it will be helpful in the future. Now, after learning the characters or the letters, learn the basic phrases and basic vocabulary. So instead of learning a lot of like words, just mugging up a lot of words, learn the most used, uh, I would say learn the first 100 most used phrases and vocabulary, because that helps in a conversation more than learning, uh, let's say, you learned a lot of fruits, you learned a lot of vegetables, but it won't be that necessary when you're actually speaking. What you actually need is the most basic and needed vocabulary in that language, and after that you can start learning the grammar. Like for grammar, I depended on videos, so it's better if you like learn grammar through watching videos, because there are a lot of social media accounts that will help you in structuring sentences and starting knowing the grammar rules. Like start with the nouns, verbs, adjectives, and all that stuff. So starting to learn the grammar is like the most important part, because if you need to speak that language, you need to know that grammar. Then the last one in this one is also optional. It if you want to like learn faster, or if you want to reach your goal in a faster way, it's better if you can type in that language, because most of the people, we text these days, we type a lot these days, but we don't write a lot. So it's better to learn to type, also learn to type in that language. Then after learning, like once you have learned the alphabets and the basic phrases, you try to read a lot in that language. Like reading, it also not improves the memory, it also improves that vocabulary. So you will know a lot of words while reading itself. And you can learn about a language faster, and it will also help you understand the structure of a sentence when you're reading. Or you could watch when you're watching the movie in that particular language. You will understand the structure of the sentence and understand how they say it. And the thing about reading is you don't have to read complex paragraphs or anything, just small stories. There will be small stories. You could read that in your language, in the language that you're learning, and that will help you like increase your vocabulary. And when you're learning a language, after like a month or 2 months, you will feel a bit demotivated. You will not like feel productive enough to learn that language, or you will feel lazy. So to keep yourself motivated, like when you like sometimes if you don't get the language, uh, you don't get this particular grammar rule, you don't get this particular phrase, you will not feel like, you feel like giving up, you won't feel like learning it. So you have to keep yourself motivated, like by like taking a break. So like if you are learning that language for a lot of days, you might get bored of the language. It has happened to me, but I say you take a 1 to 2 day break and you get back on it again. Don't like frustrate yourself by forcing yourself to learn it. Just take a small break. Don't take like 1 week or 1 month break, because that will detach you from what you have learned. So just take a small break if you're feeling demotivated. Now, use the divide and rule method, like turn your big goals into like small missions. Like in the starting, you have this goal of I want to be able to speak in this language if I go to that particular country. Speak with the basic phrases, survive with the basic phrases. You would have that goal. So I would say learn 3 to 5 phrases like every day, or if it's reading, learn 3 to 5 letters every day instead of learning learning it all together. Try not to learn all the letters in one day. It won't work. You will forget a lot, and it just won't work. So you have to divide and rule while you're learning. Then after you have completed a big goal, just celebrate your success, reward yourself with something small, because uh, it will like feel you have accomplished a goal and you have achieved something, and you have to like treat yourself when you achieve something, because it will keep you motivated. Now, in learning a language, uh, the last thing you need to do is be consistent, and don't like instead of learning for hours in a day, just take 5 minutes or 10 minutes to learn a few phrases. That is because not learning a day is much better. Like learning for 5 to 10 minutes is much better than not learning at all. So uh, even if it's little, just start learning. Then practice, you have to practice regularly. And even if you like feel demotivated, you can take a break. But to keep that language knowledge in you, you have to practice regularly, even if it's just a few minutes, like I said. Then language learning is a slow process, because it for if you're learning a tough language like Japanese, Arabic, and all, it won't just take 3 months or 1 year. It might take years. So you have to be patient, and it is a long process. It is a long journey, and it takes time and a lot. And if you are reaching the advanced level, it will take a lot of effort, but you have to be patient and persistent while learning your language. You may make mistakes and face challenges along the way, but that is like one experience. When you like make mistakes, you have to learn from it and keep on going forward so you don't get demotivated. So that's it. If you have any questions, you can ask. So anybody have any questions? Because I also would like to ask a lot of questions. So before that, if you have any questions, you can ask.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Why are there more than one language in this world?
That is because if you don't know, like if you check the history, there are how can I say, uh, the there are a lot of languages from the from the past itself. And I actually don't know much about it, but it just evolved to people just dividing their language a lot. And it's not like, I'm sorry, it's not like just knowing the language.
I have a question.
Yeah, just a minute. It's not like we all, like, I made a particular language. It's like due to conflicts and reasons, there are a lot of languages in this world. Okay, yeah, next you can ask a question.
Why these languages are very, very important?
The thing is, if languages are important because no, because in some countries, knowing only English won't help you. You need to know the native language of that country, or just at least the basic phrases of that language, because it will help you communicate more, meet a lot of new interesting people. So it's important to learn a language. Anybody else? Anybody else have any questions?
Ayan is asking a question in chat box.
Oh, wait. Okay, just a minute. I can't. I actually can't see his message in the chat box. Okay, he's asking, by phrases, did I mean phrase used in daily life? Yeah, you can learn those, but not only the phrases used in daily life, the phrases, the words that you need when you speak a language every day. Now, when you speak English every day, you might notice that you need certain words and certain phrases you use every day. Try to implement that in your language learning. Yeah, you're welcome, Ayan. Anybody else have any other questions?
Why we need languages when there are tool translators that we can hold in our.
If you don't want to learn a language and just want to use the tools, that is okay. But for some people, knowing the culture and knowing the language, for them, it's more important than just translating with tools, because translating, like, with our own, like, knowing the language and communicating with people who know the language is more like, you will get to know about the person more psychologically instead of using tools. But you can use translating tools, because it's not like you should know every language.
Okay,
So you don't, like, if you there are tools which helps you, but to connect more spiritually, I think learning the language and speaking to a person in that native country with that language is much better. Any other question?
I have a
Can
question.
I ask a question?
Who is that?
It's me.
Is it Fatima Ansel? Oh yeah, you can ask.
So my question is, how many languages are there total in the world?
In the world, I
Yes.
expected this question actually. There are already like almost 200 countries in the world, and for many countries like India, the it's so diverse that even in India there are like 40 plus languages. So we can't keep a like count of how many languages are there. Um, But
So what is in your imagination?
I didn't hear you.
How many languages are there in your imagination?
In my imagination, I can't say because there are hundreds. Because if there are like statistically speaking, if there are like almost 200 countries, you can expect double languages. But there are a lot of languages where I have ventured into it a lot, and I can't say, even I can't imagine how many languages are there because it's that vast.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions?
So if we are studying a language, what if it's so hard?
Yeah, about that, it will get hard, and even if it's an easy language, it will get hard when you're learning, like when you start learning the grammar, because the first phases are easy, and when you start going deeper and deeper, it will get hard. But the thing is, you should try to be motivated, and you can like there are methods to keep yourself motivated. Like,
Okay.
yeah, there are methods like I told in the slide that instead of learning altogether, just learn 10 minutes a day, or just celebrate your success. Just give yourself, like, imagine you finished learning the whole alphabet in that particular language. Just reward yourself with a chocolate because it will make you feel good and it will help you keep motivated. Because I'm not saying it's easy, it is very hard, and you just have to uh, like take a break or celebrate your success just to keep yourself motivated. Yeah, any other question?
I have a question.
Yeah, yes, Samir.
So when you learn a language, you learn Japanese, okay, and you went to Japan, and when you were talking, you made a fatal mistake, like a bad word or something,
Yeah,
and using AI like tools is better than making mistake like that, right?
yeah, but I so it's better to like it's not I'm not saying you have to make mistakes, but when you make mistakes, uh you can always like apologize and uh yes, using tools is an option, but I'm not saying you should not use tools because sometimes you just don't want to learn the language and you still want to go to that country just for growth. So you can use tools. But I think making that mistake when you're learning the language will help you like remind yourself that that word or what you just said is not good, and you will learn from your mistake. You know that, right? You have to learn from your mistake. And
Learn some punches.
excuse me, I didn't hear.
Learn some punches, right?
Not exactly, yeah, but if you take it that way, yeah. But I think it's better to learn the language, and even if you make a mistake, you could just apologize and tell them, "Can you please explain what mistake I made?" Because they know better than even if you have fluently learned the language, they know better because it's their culture. You get it, right?
Yeah.
Any other question?
No.
Okay, so there is like one major question um, I want to ask you all. It's like, how can you sound more like a native speaker? Anybody have any opinions and answers to that?
Accent.
Yes, Akash?
Accent. I don't know.
Yeah, it's about accent, but how can you like sound more like a, or why should you sound more like a native speaker when you learn that language?
Like
That's my
if you
question.
sound, like if you go to Japan and you sound more of like a I don't know what you call people from Japan. Then if you sound more like a person from Japan, it first might be easier for them to understand. Or you could, or to understand how to do the accent, you could just like, you could like see something with the accent and try to mimic the accent.
Yeah, you could. But the thing is, it's not very easy to like speak in the other
Yeah.
accent,
That's true.
because we have our own like accent and own way of slangs and idioms and all. But when you're learning another language, it's actually really hard to get their tone. And even if you're fluent, you might sound robotic. So anybody else have any other opinions on how to be a native speaker?
And how to like gain that accent actually.
Yes, Kendra?
I have the answers in when you ask like how can you gain that accent
Yeah.
of the. So basically, you just need to watch shows of that language.
That
like,
works.
I kind of gained my English accent from watching some random English cartoons and watching shows and all, or listening to podcasts helps a lot by gaining the accents and all.
Yeah, that's true. Shows are like one way, because you're constantly in the show, you're constantly hearing the tone they're speaking in, the way they're speaking in, you're constantly hearing it. So it will be easier when you're like to get the accent when you're watching the show. But uh, for us, if we get the accent, I think it's easier, because if you sound like a robot, some native speakers might not understand you. So I think it's better to get the accent while learning the language. So any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can ask. You there?
There is any
I don't have any
question?
questions.
I think if you don't have any questions, then we can wind up.
I got a question.
Yeah, please.
How can I learn a language effectively?
How can you learn a language effectively? Are you talking about speaking or just the whole idea? I think that's resin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
To speak.
So could you like elaborate more on your question? Resin?
Yes. How can I learn a language effectively?
Effectively. So for language learning, it's more about memorizing the vocabulary and phrases, right? So you have to like uh, make sure that you will learn a lot of phrases. You will see a lot of new stuff when you're learning a language, but you have to like just slow down, learn a few phrases or vocabulary, uh, and try to recall it throughout the day. Like while you're doing your other tasks, just try to uh, say that phrases phrases you have learned aloud. And the other thing I do is I try to text in that language. Just learn how to text and learn. And I also like try to keep a dictionary of that language. So it will help me more. It will like increase the speed of my learning of that language. So those three methods you can use it to learn effectively. Yeah, any more questions?
I have, I have one question.
Yes,
Should we learn grammar when we are learning a language?
yes. If you're trying to like get fluency, you should learn the grammar part. It's very important because if you just know the words and if you don't know to structure the sentence, then there is no use of knowing that vocabulary and knowing that language.
What is the first thing that you should learn? Is it the grammar or the words?
First thing is always the basic phrases and the letters. First thing is always learning the letters. And what I did was I learned the letter and I learned a particular word with that letter so I don't forget it. So if
Should
you
we
learn it
learn
like,
the meaning or the letters first?
excuse me, I didn't,
Should we learn the meanings or the letters first?
I think you should learn the meaning because after learning, I think you should learn the letters because after learning the letters, you would try to read it. After learning the letters, I tried to read that language and I became fluent. I'm not talking about Japanese, I'm talking about Korean. So I like started reading in that language, even though I sounded a bit robotic. I read, and when I read the paragraphs and small stories, uh, I found some familiar words which I which were like familiar to me, and I knew the meaning right there itself. Because when you're learning the letters, you learn a word with the letters. So later, when you're reading, you will get you will get the meaning, and you can always like if you uh, if you like having a if you're having a hard time completing the letters, you could write in the language and write the English version, but that language pronunciation, and you could write the meaning. So that will help. Any other question? Yeah, I don't think anybody else have
I
a
have a
question. Yeah,
What if we learn a language and we don't use it?
I don't think
What
you will learn a language if you're not going to use it. But if you have learned a language and you're not able to like go to the country and use it, you could um that's a very good question. I mean, if you could just like stop it right there, because if I was not able to like go to Japan or Korea right now, because that's the reason I'm learning. So if I'm not able to, then I'll just put a pause in it and I will just take it as as an experience. I will just take it as an experience and I would just say it was fun. Yeah, that's it.
Jannah, can you look at the chat box?
Yeah, yeah, I'm not getting the chat. Okay. Um, yeah, could you write the question again? Uh, I'm not getting the question in the chat box because there are a lot of messages. So, Ayan, if you have a question, could you type it again? You want to?
I am,
Oh, I think he's saying the answer to my question, right?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and that is, and also like you can also like practice and see videos to become more fluent. Your answer is right, Ayan. That is also a method. There is many methods when you're learning a language. You can look at many methods. Anybody else have a question? I'm guessing not. So I think I'm going to conclude here. So thank you for joining the webinar and listening to this webinar, and thank you for attending it. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Jannah, it was a nice session, dear.